Hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Today with Tally. The mission and goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Today with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your host of the evening, Mr. Brian Tally.
Welcome back to Today with Tally podcast, where we add real life value to the lives of everyday people. We're on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Anchor FM, Spotify, and About Face Radio. Simply search Today with Tally and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to get every episode and stay up to date with the latest and greatest our guests in this show has to offer. Folks, today we celebrate another milestone, day 167 of this brand new podcast, and episode 109. That's right, 109 episodes in 167 days. Folks, are you looking to perhaps be a podcast show sponsor of this show, Today with Tally? Call me today, 951-294-7259. That's 951-294-7259. Or drop me an email, thetallybill@gmail.com. That's thetallybill@gmail.com. Let's advertise your business right here on this podcast, where we have some very serious engagement going on. Let me help you reach your goals. Let's put a marketing plan together and develop a strategy to take your business to the next level. Whether you've got gear, you've got merchandise, you've got business services, or you have an event out there that you're trying to get out to the general public, hit me up. I'd love to sit down with you and once again, develop a strategy to help take your business to the next level. Now, folks, I want to tell you a little bit about a company based out of Canyon City, Colorado, called Chase's Choice. Chase's Choice is an industry leader in cannabis and hemp products and continues to heal those in need. Whether you are struggling from physical pain, anxiety, depression, or having trouble sleeping, there is a product for you that will improve your quality of life. Ken, the founder of Chase's Choice, continues to engage in open conversation on the benefits of cannabis and hemp, CBD, CBG, CBN, THC, and all of the other cannabinoids found in the plant through extensive research and development. To learn more, visit Chase's Choice online today at chaseschoice.org. That's chaseschoice.org. Or call Ken directly, the store owner, 719-371-0768. That's 719-371-0768. CBD was Chase's choice. What's yours? Folks, remember to always consult with your doctor before starting any alternative medicine products, and always check with your state and local municipalities on the laws regarding the use of CBD and hemp products. Folks, we have a very unique show for you today. Now, it's not very often that you get to sit down and have a conversation, a very serious conversation about a man who was pardoned by a sitting president of the United States of America. And that's what happened to Gary Brugman. He was pardoned by President Trump on December 23rd of 2020. Former Border Patrol agent Gary Brugman was charged by US Attorney John Sutton for violating the rights of an illegal alien in January of 2001. The following year, Agent Brugman was convicted and spent 2 years in federal prison. Agent Brugman was working in the very tough and violent border region of Eagle Pass, Texas. He responded to a scene where another agent was having trouble with a group of 10 to 12 apprehended illegal aliens. 2 of them would not comply. Agent Brugman proceeded to push one of the men to the ground. This minor incident was enough for U.S. Attorney Sutton to federally charge Agent Brugman with violating the illegal alien's constitutional rights under the color of law. During Agent Brugman's trial, Attorney Sutton brought a convicted Mexican drug smuggler whom Agent Brugman had previously arrested from his prison cell to testify against Agent Brugman. Incredibly, Attorney Sutton did an interview on the Spanish language network Univision in which he stated he was making an example out of Agent Brugman. In addition to his service as a Border Patrol agent, Gary Brugman is a Coast Guard veteran. He spent 16 years of his life defending this nation. He is now free and actively telling his story in hopes that justice will one day come. Now, folks, again, on December the 23rd of 2020, Agent Brugman finally received some much-needed mental closure when President Trump pardoned Agent Brugman. And with that, we are honored to be joined by former Border Patrol agent Gary Brugman. How are you?
How you doing, Tally?
Another day, another dollar, just doing my podcast stuff and just trying to add some real life value to the lives of everyday people, man. Just doing what I'm told.
You make a whole dollar at this? I'm still working on that.
Man, bless your heart, bless your heart. You know, I know you've got a fabulous podcast too, man, and it's going to be kind of unique. And like I said, it's going to be fun today. We get to kind of switch seats here, and I get to interview you rather than you interviewing me. It should be a lot of fun today.
It's going to be a blast, man. And like I said, when I tell you about all the details, you're not going to believe how simple this whole thing really was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty much how a lot of these cases work out. You know, they're so simple, but they're made so hard to track. And, you know, of course, you know, the government's so, you know, a bureaucratic nightmare. And really at the end of the day, nothing surprises me anymore. But, you know, I want to dive right in. We've got a lot to talk about here, and I don't want to miss out on any, you know, good time that we could talk about your story. And I want to tell it in a way that it deserves to be told. Now, I want you to take me back to when you were on this call, when you were responding in Eagle Pass, Texas, where you guys had apprehended 10 to 12 illegal aliens. I want you to pick it up from there.
All right. So it was actually January 14th of 2001, which was 9 months before 9/11. And before I start talking, just remember, I survived COVID, so I have to take a lot of deep breaths. I got that long COVID thing going on. But it was January 14th, 2001, and my partner and I responded to some sensor traffic. I saw the group. I started chasing the group. It was actually 15 of them. The government says 10 to 12. It was actually 15 illegal aliens. I chased them for a mile and a half through a pecan orchard, the whole time yelling for them to stop. In Spanish. They went over barbed wire fences. They went through concrete laterals all through the orchard, cutting from one orchard to another. Another agent and his trainee, the rookie agent, had 4 days out in the field, rolled up on me and asked me which way they were going. I was losing them because I had 38 pounds of gear. I was getting tired. I kind of pointed in that direction. They took off in a vehicle. They got to a point where the vehicle couldn't go anymore. And the trainee, young kid, early 20s, fresh legs, got out and caught the group. Right? Now, I was still running towards his location. And from my point of view, he had his back turned and he was going like this. And some were sitting, some were standing. He was going like this, telling them to sit down. There were two behind him that were squatted with their bags, and they kept making a movement like they were either going to get up and run or jump the agent from behind because he had his back completely turned to them. So I flanked him, Sally. I ran up, and like I was trained in the academy, I put my hand on my weapon, secured my weapon, and used my leg as an extension of my arm and knocked them on their ass, knocked them from the squatting to the sitting position. And I told him, sit down, and asked him, why are you running? What are you running for? I've been chasing you for a mile and a half. So we gathered them up. Other agents arrived. The transport unit arrived. They took him back to the station and processed him. And that was it, Tally. That's all that happened.
And, you know, And you're no stranger to securing borders. I mean, you served in the Coast Guard. You weren't green when you picked up this job. You are very well trained at what you do, and you're responding to an incident that could have been a dangerous incident. And when they're not complying, of course, you put them on their butt. But really, from all the research I've done, it wasn't in a very aggressive, knockdown. It was very simplistic, if you will. It wasn't something that caused any bodily harm or anything like that. Now,
the extent of his injuries on paper, what he declared was he had a loss of breath, which could have been from running for 1.5 miles, and a residual pain on his side for a day and a half. That was the extent of his injuries.
Now, how many agents were on scene of this on this call
when it happened?
Mm-hmm.
When I put him up, just a trainee agent and myself.
How did that one illegal immigrant file a complaint against you, and how did that happen?
So the procedure is that if an illegal alien has a complaint, he'll tell a supervisor. Supervisor will get the Mexican consulate. They'll sit down and listen to the complaint. And if they feel there's any wrongdoing and he needs to move up, they'll move criminally. If not, the agent will get a reprimand, they'll get a write-up or some days off or nothing, depending on what they determine. In this case, the illegal alien that I pushed happened to see the Mexican consulate on his way out of the station, talked to the Mexican consulate by himself. Mexican consulate left, went to the US Attorney. The US Attorney went to the Office of the Inspector General, who's the one who came down on me. So they completely bypassed them. When they took my weapon away, when my boss took my weapon away, I asked him what's going on. My boss says, we don't know. It's not the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol never did anything to me. It was the Office of the Inspector General. He told me it's an outside agency that's coming down on me.
What stops? I mean, what happened here? Again, I just can't put my finger on this because, I mean, what stops any illegal alien saying this same thing?
There's nothing. There's nothing. Sally, I've always said this has been 23 years since this incident happened. January 14th, so just over 22 years. I say this whole war on law enforcement that we have now, this whole defund the police, this whole disrespect for police officers and law enforcement in general started with my case. Because after me, this Johnny Sutton prosecuted Gilmer Ramos and Compam, 2 agents in El Paso, prosecuted Gilmer Hernandez. After that, we had the police officers in New York that choked that guy out, and he passed away as they were choking him out. Then we had Ferguson, and everything has just escalated from there ever since this case.
Mm-hmm. Now, like you said, 22 years ago, your life changed in ways that you could have never, ever, ever seen coming or ever imagined. What was your emotional and mental state once they took away your weapon and you found out that you were being investigated by the OIG's office at a federal level and not actually with the Border Patrol?
Well, I sat behind a camera for 18 months. The investigation took 18 months. And at month 14, I got a letter from the US Attorney stating that I was a target of the investigation. That's a whole other part. But in 18 months, Tally, not one time did I see an investigator. Not one time did during this investigation, not one did anybody ever ask me my side of the story. The first time I ever told my side of the story, my trial when I was up on the stand. That's the first time anybody, and it was my attorney, asked me what happened that day. So I don't know how you can conduct an investigation without getting both sides of the story. But
the agent you were on the ground with, did he ever type up a buddy statement stating that you did nothing wrong and you were simply doing your job?
No, he testified against me. him and a journeyman agent testified against me. So he was a brand new agent, 4 days on the job. And when this came down to investigation, and I've said this before, they must have terrified him because he lied his ass off at the grand jury and at the trial. I mean, at the trial, they had the government had three main witnesses, and it was the trainee agent, the illegal alien, and the journeyman agent. Oh, and of course the drug smuggler that they brought in from another case who ended up with a broken nose. So at the trial, the trainee agent says that he had everything under control, which he didn't. And I ran up and I kicked this guy, and then I jumped on him and I started punching him in the ribs so hard that he could hear the breaths coming out going, from the illegal alien. Then I grabbed another illegal alien, threw him on top of the first guy, punched him, and maybe some punches to a third guy, which never happened. The illegal alien came up after him and testified that I pushed him to the ground and I kicked him, which I did, but I never punched him. He said I never laid a hand on him. He testified to it. And he couldn't remember what side I kicked him on. The journeyman agent, the FTO, the journeyman agent, says that he was too far away. He didn't see me punch him, but he could hear the kick from 80 yards away. So I kicked this guy so hard that he heard it 3/4 of a football field away. But the guy can't remember what side I kicked him on.
What was the demeanor of the journeyman agent during this takedown when you made the arrest of these 10 to 12 apprehended illegal aliens?
The journeyman actually rolled up afterwards. So I already had control of the situation by the time he rolled up, because he was driving and he got to a point where he couldn't drive anymore because there was a concrete lateral. So the trainee got out on foot and chased him down. So the trainee was by himself with the 15 illegal aliens and didn't have the situation under control.
Who's to say that the illegal aliens were also going to accuse this journeyman Border Patrol agent for the same wrongdoing that they were accusing you of?
Well, that's kind of how they ended up being witnesses, because since the trainee agent actually caught the group, he was the apprehended agent. Even though I started the pursuit, he was the apprehended agent, him and his partner. So when they made the complaint, the inspector general came down on them at first. And they were like, well, it wasn't us that pushed him to the ground, it was him. And I never denied doing it because I didn't do anything wrong. What I did was taught to me in the academy. I followed procedure to the book. So I never denied it. I said, yeah, I knocked him on his ass. I sure did. You know, I had nothing to hide. I still don't have nothing to hide. But yeah, it was them that they came down on first, which is why they ended up being their witnesses, because they probably threatened the new kid.
Prior to this incident taking place, what kind of a track record did you have with the U.S. Border Patrol? What type of agent were you characterized as?
I was known as a hard charging agent. I was known to be able to like stumble upon narcotics anywhere I went. There's a story where I went to go get coffee and hot dogs at the Circle K and came across a bunch of dope one time because I had a knack for it. I was well respected by the other agents. I mean, my supervisors loved me. I mean, I was on track to go on a boat patrol when that first happened. I mean, I was an outstanding agent.
So you would consider yourself to be a poster agent, somebody that did their job and did it well and was very well liked amongst your peers.
Very much so, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, when this all came down, this was the Bush administration under US Attorney John Sutton. Mm-hmm. Now, do you believe that they pulled this journeyman agent aside and put a lot of pressure on this agent to testify against you, to kind of spin the truth, to make an example out of you during this time of, you know, heavy, because back then, the border was, very porous as it is now. Not quite as bad, but now, why do you think that happened?
What I think happened was when they came down on him, they actually scared the trainee agent, and he kind of dragged the journeyman into it. And I know their technique because it's happened to me before. There was another case years earlier where we apprehended a load of dope, and we got a bunch of the mules, and we were going to court, and the U.S. Attorney in Del Rio, one of the assistant U.S. attorneys, I don't remember his name. We had the guy. He wanted me to testify that I had seen the guy with the dope, and I had not seen the guy with the dope. There were 10 mules. Three of them didn't have bundles. 7 of them had bundles. One was a guide. The other 2 was security. So he wanted me to testify that this guy that we had dope on him. I told him I can't do that. I said he had camouflage clothing. His footprints matched the footprints that were on the ground. We apprehended him at the scene. I chased him, but I cannot testify that he had dope on him because I don't know if he was one of the ones that did or not. And he was insisting that I do it and started threatening me to the fact that, we can giglio you and tell me that I was going to lie, probably lying, under I was trying to perjure myself. I told him, listen, man, you can do what you want. It's not happening. So I know that the U.S. attorneys will try to get you to say what they want. And they did with this kid, with this young trainee agent. For example, tell you a bunch of things that happened during the trial. The kid testified, and I say kid because he was a young guy. The trainee agent testified. He swore to God that this happened at 3:30 in the afternoon. It was 7 p.m. It was 7 p.m. in January in a pecan orchard. It's like dusk. It's like half day, half night, and it was kind of dark because of the branches and the trees. We don't get it. We're working swing shift. We don't get out of muster until 3:30 p.m. We go in at 3. We don't get out until 3 p.m. The scope truck is the one that initially spotted the group. When I responded, the scope truck doesn't come out at 3 in the afternoon. It comes out at night. Usually goes out at 6 p.m. I mean, the illegal alien testified he was running from the flashlights. Why would we need flashlights at 3 p.m.? They wanted the trainee agent to absolutely make sure that it was daytime, that there could be no error. Just things like that they try to change. So I think they got the trainee and they reeled the journeyman agent into it.
Now, it's one thing to have your weapon and badge removed or whatever while you're under investigation during this 18 months. During this 18 months, were you ever fearful? Did you have anxiety? Were you depressed? What was your psyche during this 18 months while your life was literally in limbo?
Well, it was rough. Towards the end, it started getting real bad. In the beginning, I had no fears because I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. And over and over and over. So you see, there's a whole other part that we need to talk about. But I knew that I had done what I was trained, and I didn't know this was actually the incident that I was being investigated for 14 months. So we're going to fast forward a little bit, Patty, and I will answer your question. But that happened January 14th. On February 22nd, which happened to be my anniversary as Border Patrol of that same year, 2001, 6 weeks later, I responded to assist other agents who had seen 46 traffic, which is narcotics, coming across the river. By the time I got there, they had jumped the load, and they had 7 mules running around everywhere. We caught 5. There were 2 that were missing, and the infrared camera tower guided me into where the other 2 were. Once I got close, they got up and started running. Now, we were in tall grass in the field, and the grass was about 2 feet high. It's 4:30 in the morning, so there was dew like fog on the ground. So I started chasing them, yelling for them to stop. They ran full bore. I was right behind them. They came to a barbed wire fence. They banged the right, and I started chasing them again. And they came to another barbed wire fence, and they knew they couldn't go anywhere. So the first guy jumped in between the strands of barbed wire like Superman to get to the other side. It's pretty impressive if you ever see it. I don't ever want to do it. And then the guy in front of me knew he wasn't going to make it, so he hit the fence and flopped over. I had momentum, body armor. I said, I'm doing the same thing. So I hit the fence and flopped over the fence. Now all three of us are on the ground on the other side. The first guy got up and ran. The second guy that was right in front of me, he started getting up, and I got him by the legs, and we started tussling, trying to get to our feet. And I didn't notice at the time, but he was a little short dude, probably about 5'3", 5'4", but he was like this wide. And I don't know what happened. Next thing I know, I saw my feet and the stars in the same picture. And this dude body slammed me on the ground, jumped on top of me, started choking me with both his hands. I tried getting him off me. I took a swing. I missed him. He grabbed my hand and pinned it to the ground. Still had one hand on my throat. And I had him by the collar trying to keep the pressure off my throat. A bunch of things went through my mind that day. I said, so this is how it's going to end? Oh, my God, I'm dying. Oh, my God, I'm losing. And he had a polo shirt on. And I looked at the button that he had on his polo shirt. And I thought to myself, if I could get to my gun, that's where I'm going to put the bullet. But in all reality, had I been able to get to my gun, he probably would have taken it away because I was losing this fight. I started seeing some yellow flashes in front of my eyes. And I did what every tough kid from Brooklyn would do. I said, God, please help me. I yelled it out. God, please help me. I managed to break this hand free. I hit Smuggler on the side of the head in a temple, knocked him off me, hit him pretty hard. I rolled over on him with my forearm, put it into his throat. And now I can feel him grabbing at my gun belt, grabbing at my handcuffs, trying to grab something. So I said, this has got to stop here. So I wound up and I punched him in the nose 3 times. I felt his nose break on the second one, and then gave him one more because he was still fighting. And then he finally yelled out, officer, please, in Spanish, officer, please don't hit me anymore. And I said, then stop fighting, you son of a bitch. I just told him just like that in Spanish. Pues no pelees, puto. So he got arrested. I arrested him. He got sentenced to 57 months in prison. And that was the end I heard about that. So this whole time I'm under investigation, Tally, I thought I was under investigation for breaking this guy's nose. That's what I thought it was about. And over I played this scenario in my head. I used officer presence, verbal commands, soft empty hand, open empty hand. I was like, I felt I could have used deadly force had I been able to get to it, and I would have had I been able to get to my gun. Wasn't able to. I said, he's still alive. I got the situation. What did I do wrong? Ends up that it wasn't because of that guy. It was because of the guy pushed on the ground. And, there's a bunch of things about conspiracy theories, Tally. There's a lot of things that I think that I can't prove that I don't really talk about because I can't prove any of it. But when I first got the letter saying that I was a target of investigation, I saw the date, January 14th, and I saw the guy's name. And ironically, both the guy I pushed on the ground and the drug smuggler, their first names were Miguel Angel. And the guy I pushed on the ground was Jimenez Saldana. The drug smuggler was Rodriguez Silva. So they were both Miguel Angel. And when I looked at this, I was like, this ain't the guy's name? And I was confused because they had the same first names. And then I looked at the date, and it took me 4 days, Tally, to figure out who this first guy was that I was being charged with. Ended up being the guy I just pushed on the ground. That's what I was being charged with. So when I went to the computer to look up, paperwork, arrest forms, there was a six week block that was missing off the computers, like a system crash. When I went to the hard files, there was a 2-week block, including the paperwork that I needed, that was missing. So I couldn't, the only thing that they didn't get to, and they talk about the government making things disappear. I witnessed it. The only thing they didn't get to was I went to the, to who I was assigned with that day, to the muster sheets. They hadn't got to that. I saw who I was working with and when, and finally remembered I'm being charged with the guy I pushed on the ground. And it didn't make any sense.
Do you think, and I'm just going to throw something out there. See, you weren't engaging with mothers and their sons and daughters and families and the immigrants that are coming over that want to work. That's a different set of immigrants. You were dealing with bad guys. You were dealing with folks that were running drugs, that were breaking the law, that were, not the best folks, dangerous people that were connected to cartels and all that other stuff. Do you think because they knew that you were a stellar agent, that they needed to stop you somehow because you were the one that was intercepting a lot of their work, and they wanted to do whatever they could to shut Gary Brugman down? And perhaps they were a little late to the show with your first incident, and they used this second incident with Miguel Angel to say, hey, look, let's turn this guy in and see if it sticks.
And get him off the line.
And it stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to take you out of that role, which probably opened up their trade even more to be successful, because the stellar agent Brugman was no longer boots on the ground there protecting our borders like you have sworn to do, since you joined the Coast Guard and then on to the U.S. Border Patrol. Now, I want to go to the trial.
Yeah.
The 18-month investigation ended up leading to federal court. Walk me through the federal court process as you were in there before a federal judge. I want to know what that experience was like.
So I had 1 month to find a lawyer. I found the one I can afford. At the time, the Border Patrol Union didn't help me. They said, if you win your case, we'll give you 75% of your attorney fees back. I was like, I don't need it back. I need it now. I need attorney. So I hired a lawyer I could, a guy out of Houston named Ron Tonkin. And we went to court. So it was a 5-day trial. The first day started on a Monday. Now, I didn't know Texas very well at the time. It's only been a few years since I've been in Texas, and most of the time I spent it working on the border. I knew San Antonio pretty well, didn't know the rest of it. So I didn't know that Austin was this little liberal city in Texas. I thought, hey, that's the capital. It's going to be the best place for my trial because they want to move it to Austin. So I agreed to it. I also didn't know that the judge that I had was one of the most liberal judges in the state of Texas. His name was William Wayne Justice. All right. William Wayne Justice was a judge, and he was a senior federal judge at the time. He was 80-something years old, fell asleep during my trial about 5 times. So jury selection was Monday morning. They selected the jury. Trial started Monday afternoon. They brought in the trainee agent. They brought in the illegal alien, and they brought in the journeyman. And then Tuesday morning, we cross-examined them. And by 10:30 Tuesday morning, they were done with what I was charged with. Then they approached the bench, and I'm sitting here going, "What's going on?" And they were up there for like 10 minutes. My attorney comes back and says, they're adding additional evidence. I'm like, what additional evidence? And they told me the drug smuggler. And I said, what are you talking about? How is this possible? So all of a sudden, the doors open, and in comes this freaking guy that tried to kill me with a U.S. Marshal behind him. And he scanned the whole courtroom, and he saw me, and the whole way to the bench kept his eyes on me the whole time. I jumped out of my seat, and I stood there at the ready to fight him in the courtroom. And he sat down, swore in. He got up, swore in, sat down. And as soon as he sat down, I sat down and crossed my arms. And Tally, for the next 4 hours, it was me and him staring at each other. They'd ask him a question, and he would turn. He had an interpreter because he didn't speak English. He'd turn, answer the question, right back at me. And with my peripherals, I could see the jury looking. I could see everybody looking. And when he left, again, he stood up, started walking out, eyeballed me all the way to the door. I stood up, and just in case, the judge asked me, once the jury left, the judge asked me, what was that about, Mr. Brugman? And I told him, Your Honor, with all due respect, I don't know if anybody's ever tried to kill you with their bare hands, but if they did, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be sitting if they put them in the same room with you. So
why did the U.S. government turn their backs on a good agent to lock you up, essentially, and to bring in convicted criminals that are serving in jail for drug trafficking and smuggling to completely betray you? And that doesn't make any sense to me. Why do you think that they made an example out of you through? I mean, I'm just trying to put my finger on this. And again, nothing. If I had $1 for as many times as I said, nothing makes sense anymore, man, we'd be living in the Bahamas in a $20 million crib with a boat. And, I mean, literally, I mean, this is just it's asinine. And I can't figure this stuff out. And I've done a lot of research on your case over the years. And we've known each other for quite some time. You're an honorable guy. I mean, I've never seen any thing in my mind to think otherwise, of you and your character. Now, this 5-day trial would end up convicting you, right, of how many felonies?
Just the one.
Okay, so one felony. And the judge sentenced you to 27 months in federal prison.
Correct.
Now, what did that feel like after serving your country for all these years as a member of the U.S. Coast Guard, serving your country honorably, and then being sent to the border and working a very difficult job and doing everything the right way and doing everything by the book? Again, a very hard job to do. What did that betrayal feel like when that judge slapped that gavel down and said, you are convicted and you are going to federal prison? What did that look like when that bailiff escorted you out of that courtroom?
Well, they like you said, why did they turn their backs on me? I don't know. I know that the Bush administration was trying to appease Mexico, who the president at the time was Vicente Fox. I know that Johnny Sutton, his dad, is the Bush family doctor. Him and George Bush have known each other for a long time. When George Bush became the governor of Texas, he brought Johnny Sutton to Austin. And then when he became president, made Alberto Gonzalez, another friend, made him the U.S. attorney, and made Johnny Sutton the attorney general for the U.S. attorney for the Western District of Texas. They brought in, from Washington, D.C., they brought in a civil rights trial lawyer. That's how hard they went after me. And I happened to run into this lawyer in the bathroom during one of the breaks during the trial. And this was in October, right around Halloween. There was Halloween parties going on all over Austin. And I was using the restroom, walks in, stands at the urinal next to me. And he's like, Halloween in Austin. You going out tonight? I said, no. You? He goes, no, I got a trial to win. So I asked him straight up. I was like, do you really think I did this? You really think I'm guilty of doing my job? And he zipped up, and with the smirk on his face, he says, it doesn't matter what I think. I got a $50 million budget to make sure you go to prison, and you're going to prison. It's just a matter of how long. And I felt this like somebody dumped a bucket of warm water on me. When the verdict came back guilty, the court clerk who the stenographer, the court clerk, three ladies, both all went right. And when the judge read it, before he said anything, he read it. He was like he was shocked. So when they read guilty again, that bucket of warm water. Now he allowed me to stay out on bond. I didn't get taken away from the courtroom. He allowed me to stay out on bond pending an appeal, which took about another 14 months. So I was out on bond for 14 months. I started using my GI Bill to go to college. And then in March of 2004, the trial was in 2002. In March of 2004, I I found out that I lost the appeal. And the marshals came and basically kicked down my door. I was staying with my mom in San Antonio. My mom was 70-something years old at the time. They pushed her on the ground, wrapped me up, and took me away. So when I got to prison, I was in five different prisons. First, they took me to the federal building, processed me, and they put me in a contract prison here in San Antonio with these rent-a-pig security guards. So when I got to my first prison, which was Coleman, Florida, from the prison in San Antonio, they flew me to Oklahoma City, put me in a transfer center, and then I got placed in Coleman, Florida, which was a low. When I got there, the counselor, the first thing he told me is, just so you know, you're no longer a federal agent. Your name's not Agent Brugman anymore. It's inmate Brugman. And to the guards, I was a bad cop. And to the inmates, I was a cop. So I was kind of screwed because I didn't have an allegiance. The only allegiance I had, ironically, was the Puerto Rican nation, which just took me in because they didn't have a choice. They didn't really care much about Border Patrol because they're American citizens, American nationals, US nationals. So they didn't really care. They didn't have a lot of interaction. Everybody else, the Mexicans in the prison wanted my liver on a stick.
Paint me a picture of an average day that you spent in federal prison. How long were you in your cell block? What did it look like when you ate chow? And what did the threats look like on a daily basis for your life?
So when I first went in, I tried saying that I was there for tax evasion because I wasn't going to say that I was a federal agent. But they already knew. They already knew who I was and made me. So I could hear the Mexican population talking about how I was an agent and how they wanted to kick my ass. I guess they didn't realize I spoke good Spanish. I basically got up in the mornings, went to chow. The threats got so bad against me that I would walk around with magazines stuffed inside my pants under my shirt. So to make kind of like a makeshift body armor. And eventually I would end up out of newspapers. Eventually I ended up making like a newspaper and a packing tape made body armor that I wore under my vest, under my shirt. I got jumped by the Mexicans in Coleman, Florida, and they upgraded me to the penitentiary in Atlanta. So I didn't catch another case. They split one of their melons, but I ended up going to the penitentiary in Atlanta, and I was there for about 3.5 months, locked down every day, in a cell made for two with 7 people. So there was a guy on the top bunk, there was a guy on the bottom bunk, there was a guy underneath the bottom bunk. There were 2 guys to my right sleeping, 2 guys on one mattress. There was a guy curled around the toilet bowl, and I was sleeping under the sink with my feet up on the toilet bowl. And that's how it was for about 3.5 months. And we got out on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We didn't even like go outside. They just let us out into like the main area. We can either shower or we can make a phone call because we only had 1 hour. And when they let everybody out at once, the line's really long. It takes that hour to either take a shower or make a phone call.
What were the inmates like in federal prison?
Depends which one we were at. When I was at Coleman, Florida, it's a low. And when you go to a low security, where you sleep is kind of like a squad bay. So you got like office cubicles. It's made of cinder block. It's got like office cubicles. They call it your cube. So when you sleep on the top bunk, you basically see everybody else sleeping on the top bunk, right? So if they want you, they're gonna come get you, which is how I got into that jam. When they sent me to the penitentiary in Atlanta, I was locked up 24 hours a day in a cell. So I never really got to go out, except for 1 hour, 3 days a week. And then after that, I went to the Yazoo City, Mississippi, to a medium. And when I was at the medium, it's the class of inmate there is a lot more violent and dangerous than it is in a low, because at the low, all they have are minor criminals, snitches, guys that cop plea bargains and snitched on everybody else so they can get an easier sentence, white collar guys. I mean, the class of inmate is shit at the low. When you go to a medium, the class of inmate is more dangerous because there's a lot more hostility, but there's a lot more respect because they will beat your ass in a minute. So, and the other good thing is about the medium is that at 9 o'clock, since it's still medium security, you get locked in your cell at 9 o'clock at night until 7 in the morning. So if you have a good cellie, right, you can actually go to sleep and get some sleep because nobody's going to come in and get you because all the doors are locked. Now, if you get stuck in there with Bubba, then you're jammed up. Thankfully, I got locked up with a guy that had been there 18 years, was well respected. He was an older black guy. They called him Jungle Book. That was his name, Jungle Book. I don't even know his real name. And this guy was cool because he knew everybody and he sold cigarettes. So at night, he'd bang on the door and the guards would drop him a lit cigarette under the door and he'd say, "Hey, I need another for my cellie." So they get me one too, you know? So he would buy cigarettes, break them apart and make like cigarette joints out of them, rather like tissue paper. And he'd trade them for food trays. So every meal he had like 10 food trays. Like, "You hungry? We got food." So that was all right. But then they took me down to the low Yazoo City. And again, that was a mess because the class of inmate as a low is garbage, you know.
Serving 2 years in federal prison. I want to know, and if you want to get vulnerable, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. What did it do to you as a person and as a human being? How did it change your life?
So when I got out of prison, like my whole network, my whole circle, when I got back to San Antonio, once I got out, it was all cops because those were the only people that I knew. I knew cops and law enforcement. Excuse me. And they tell me it took me almost 2.5 years to be myself again. So when I got out of prison, I was working for a buddy of mine in his shop, and I was still under probation, and I was afraid to go distance. You know, he'd send me somewhere, and I can't go there; it's too far. I would go out riding my motorcycle, like just out about town, and I go a couple of exits down the road, and I felt like I had to turn around because I was too far away. It was kind of like Shawshank Redemption. I asked my buddy all the time, can I go to the bathroom? He's like, "Go to the fucking bathroom." You know, go. I was very institutionalized.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what to do because for 2 years I was told at what time I woke up, at what time I went to sleep. I was told what to eat. I was told what to do. And it was kind of like being in the military, but worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your life was 100% structured. Now, when you got out, what was the reaction? And you know, this could have been, you know, and I could have asked this in the beginning. What was the initial reaction of your peers and of your fellow Border Patrol agents on how you were treated and the injustice here that you had been through?
Well, I still have a very tight relationship with a lot of the agents that I worked with. Like I said, I was very well respected, very well trusted. When they called for backup, and I responded that I was on the way, everybody was happy. They're like, all right, 746 is on his way. When I got out, a lot of my cop friends and my Border Patrol agents gave me big hugs and wrapped their arms around me. And I was like, don't touch me. Because for 2 years in prison, you can't even bump into somebody. It's like, what are you touching me for? I was very standoffish. Like I said, they said it took me almost 2 years to come back to normal. The respect had never failed. To them, I was back. To me, I was like, why are you touching me?
Yeah, you're now a changed man, of course,
Yeah.
and you're going to have different. Now, what was the morale like with the agency when you left, and then during all of the trial and through the investigations? Did at some point your peers and your fellow agents ever say, "Why am I doing this job? If they're going to treat me like this, if they're going to treat Brugman like this, they could treat me like this"? And did they ever feel like they were handcuffed and that they couldn't really do their job any longer?
A lot of my friends here in not just San Antonio police departments, but police departments across the country, because I had a network, they said that this was a real eye opener for them, that they could have been, that they could end up in jail for stuff that they did because they did their jobs. Many veteran police officers says, we try teaching the young guys, to not be so gung ho, but if they want to do it, they want to do it. A lot of the older police officers said, dude, I go on duty and I stay away from everybody, collect my paycheck. So there was a lot of collecting the paycheck going on, just because everybody was afraid to do their jobs after what happened to me, even in the Border Patrol. I mean, they were like, dude, we're afraid to do anything. When I was on the cameras, there was an agent, and he was a relatively new agent, about a year or two in. And there was a guy that wasn't listening to him. And I was telling him, I said, dude, you need to put this guy in cuffs. I'm telling him over the radio because I'm watching him on the camera. And he came back in pissed off. He's like, what do you want me to do? Put my hands on him so I can end up, under investigation like you? I was like, dude, just because of what happened to me doesn't mean you have to stop doing your job. You're gonna end up getting hurt because you're gonna second guess everything. And a lot of guys second guess everything, just kick back. It's been 20 years. I'm sure that feeling's gone now, but still my legacy still lives at that Eagle Pass station. And there's still a lot of teachings that go on because of what happened to me.
Well, and I don't blame them for taking the position that they took on doing just that, punching the clock. I can't do my job. I'm completely handcuffed. And then they look at you. I mean, look, you serve 2 years in prison, and then you tack on an additional 18 months of an investigation. And then you tack on, the rehabilitation it took you lost 7 years of your life that you're never going to be able to get back. In addition to that, to add insult to injury, we're going to slap a felony on you to walk around with that for the rest of your life. You would ultimately prevail because you knew what was right and what was wrong, and you knew that you were innocent of what the U.S. Attorney and the OIG had, the animal they had painted you out to be. You would end up, after all these years, getting the attention of sitting president Donald Trump. How did that happen? And how would that end up playing out to President Trump issuing a pardon that would ultimately remove that felony from your record and give you that sense of mental closure?
Well, my brother, like I said, I was at this for a long time. Once I didn't actually apply for a pardon until 2018 because Bush put me in prison. Obama wasn't going to pardon me. So when Donald Trump became president, I said, this is my opportunity. I gave him a little bit of time to settle in. And Mind you, during this whole time, I've had a lot of people on my side: congressmen, senators, Laura Ingraham, Sarah Carter, Bernard Kerrick, a lot of people in my corner. Glenn Beck. So there's a local radio host here named Joe Pags, good friend of mine, been with me since I got out of the prison, always supported me, messes with me hard. He messes with me hard, has never forgotten me. So when I used to go on his radio show, he used to be like, and today we have Gary Brugman, the Border Patrol agent who ruthlessly and mercilessly beat the living hell out of an illegal alien. And I tell him, dude, you really need to stop saying that. And he started laughing. He's like, I say that because none of that happened, you know? But he has a attorney. He's a professor of law, was a JAG attorney. His name is Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Atticott. And he's a professor of law at St. Mary's University. And at the time, ran a place called the Institute for Terrorism Law, which has now become the Warrior Defense Project. So he told him about my case. Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Atticott took me on pro bono and filed my pardon when President Trump was in office. I pushed this hard. Me and him went on several talk shows. We went on Chris Peranto's Battle Line podcast. We went on, I go to Cornerstone Church here in San Antonio. My pastor, Pastor Hagee, is very well known, and he has a YouTube show called the Hagee Hotline. I was on that. I had Laura Ingraham, Sarah Carter, everybody pushing this. I had a friend, her name's Diane, that I grew up with in New York, and she travels selling merchandise at a lot of big events, and she did a lot of the Trump rallies. She would print out copies of my pardon and pass them to anybody on the other side of the fence that would take it. She gave it to Corey Lewandowski twice. She gave it to Pam Bondi. She gave it to Eric Trump. She gave it to a lot of Secret Service guys. I had a lot of Border Patrol agents. Whenever they were on detail where the president went down to the border, printed out my pardon, gave it to Secret Service agents. Can you see if the president gets this? I had a friend of mine who was a commander in the Coast Guard out on the West Coast. He went to Donald Trump Jr.'s book signing and bought a book, had it signed, and gave him a copy of the pardon. So I did, and I started my podcast trying to get the president's attention, so I can get a pardon. And finally, it came down to it. I ended up having a connection in the White House, and it literally got walked in, and apparently the president was like, why is this guy's name coming across my desk? So on December 23rd of 2020, I got the phone call, and I pulled over. I was driving with my mom, and I started crying, and she was like, are you okay? My mom was 88 years old, had some dementia. I was like, this is good, Mom, this is good. And I'm really glad that she was alive to see me get the pardon. And then she kept forgetting that I got the pardon. So she's like, you got pardon? So she enjoyed it like 5 times. She enjoyed it like 5 times. But the day after I got the pardon, I was up in Fort Worth, and I went out for a drive, and everything was just so much clearer, Tally. The sky was bluer, the air felt fresher, my truck ran better. I mean, everything was just like perfect. But it wasn't until about maybe 3 or 4 weeks later that I left church, and I went out to Black Rifle Coffee in Bernie after church, and I got me a cup of coffee, and I had a Warp tobacco cigar, and I was sitting there just outside the coffee shop watching people go by. There was a little Trump train that went by, and I couldn't help but break down and start crying because of the freedom that I felt. It felt like I was finally free. And there's a sign up in DC I think it was a Korean memorial that says freedom isn't free. It's not. It's not. And people don't realize all the freedoms that this country gives them. They don't realize what the Second Amendment means. I lost my Second Amendment right for 20 years, and I finally got it back. And as you can tell, I've kind of invested heavily. After carrying a gun for almost 16 years and being a shooter before that, it's like they chopped off part of my arm. It's like, what do I do now? I had when I was a felon, at one time I had a wife with 2 little girls. I couldn't protect them. I couldn't do anything. It's such an important thing. And to be free and to be able to exercise, that right. And when I was a felon, I had all these great jobs, but I could never get to a corporate level because of the felony. I was always stuck in a lower management. And now when I apply for jobs and everything, I don't even have to put that I was ever convicted. And it feels kind of weird. It feels kind of weird saying, no, I've never been, especially when you buy a firearm. I mean, I'm so free. I mean, they just gave me my first suppressor,
Mm-hmm.
It's just an incredible feeling because that yoke is broken. That yoke that tied you in is gone. And has life been great since? It has. About 8 months after I got the pardon, I almost died of COVID. And I was in a hospital I was taking care of my mom because for about 2 years. And I was on a ventilator for 17 days. It hit me like a freight train. I got trached. I had double pneumonia. And when I woke up from the coma, my mom had passed. So I didn't even get to say goodbye to her. So, but I didn't fight for 20 years to get a presidential pardon to die from a China virus, And since then, that's why you kind of hear me breathing heavy. Life has been good. I've started a little security company. I still do real estate, and I'm just doing the best I can to live life to the fullest because I lost 20 years of it. I was out of prison. Yeah, I've been out of prison since 2006, but I've been shackled.
Right.
Now I'm trying to make up for all that lost time. And as far as a career, I started this little security company. I'm doing all right. I enjoy it. It's nothing like being a Border Patrol agent. I'm still trying to become a police officer somewhere. The state of Texas won't let me get a police license. I don't understand why, because they give me a security. I'm an armed bodyguard, got a license to carry. I got my first can, but they're telling me that I got convicted of a crime and I was forgiven for that crime, but I'm not exonerated. I'm like, I'm pardoned. It's gone. But I'm still fighting that fight. If it takes 20 years, I'm going to wear a police officer badge again.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm very sorry to hear about the passing of your mother, but you guys shared a lot of good experiences together through a lot of hardship and extreme trauma. Now, I remember when you had COVID as well, too. I followed that very closely, and myself and my family, along with the circle that we run in, was all concerned. And
we got a really good circle.
We prayed heavily for you, and we still do. Now, really, the time you served in prison, like you said, this has taken over 20 years of your life. It's something that's on your mind every single second, really, every minute, every hour of every day, because it's become who you are. You're the guy that got a presidential pardon, and there's not too many folks that could say, yeah, I've been pardoned by the president of the United States.
By the greatest president of the United States.
How has that changed your life, Gary? And I know right now you said, look, the sky's bluer. My truck is running better. You're overwhelmed with gratitude. You're lucky and so blessed to be alive. What kind of a life are you living now with that freedom, with that gratitude? Do you look at life through perhaps a different set of lenses these days?
I believe that if you set your mind to do something, you can do it, because it's like you said, it's not easy to get a presidential pardon. It's very rare. As a matter of fact, there are 25,000 pardons behind track. It's not easy. After living life as a felon for 20 years, and I grew up in New York City, Brooklyn, I avoided trouble. I wasn't always a little saint, but I avoided trouble for most of my life. And I joined the military because I had already planned my life out. I joined the military because I planned my life out. Had this not happened to me, Tally, had this not happened to me, I would have been eligible for retirement in 2018, February 2018, with 29 years of service, because I brought back my military time, 29 years of service at age 51. Had I not retired and this not happened, I would have been mandatory retired this year because I turned 57 this year. I've been mandatory retired in September with 34 years of service. And as far as retirement, I got zero. I've got zero. I've got nothing. I'll be working for the rest of my life. Do I make money? Yeah, money's easy to make, but I don't have a retirement in place. I don't have anything. Got some savings. Would I love to have retired and this not happen and not spend 2 years in prison? Yeah, I would love to, all my trainees, all my friends are retirement, living life in beautiful homes wherever they decide to be. I wish I had that. However, this has brought a lot of people into my life, including you, people like Ed Hendy, so many good people, Sarah Carter, Laura Ingram, everybody that's helped me along this journey over the past 20 years, that if I were given the opportunity to do it over again and have this not happen and not have these people in my life, I don't know that I would. So I'm kind of cross. What do you do? Do you take the retirement life that you wanted, that you worked so hard for, or do you live without the people that really cared about you and got you through the hard times?
Mhm.
It's a tough choice, but life is good right now. It's life isn't easy. It sure as hell is not fair. Life isn't fair at all, but life is good, and it's up to you to make the best out of it, regardless of what happens. I mean, you just got to keep pushing forward, keep the fight moving forward, and never quit. Never quit, man, because there have been plenty of times I wish quit, because I've wanted to quit so many times. I just can't. I would never accomplish what I've done if I would have quit. And I want to quit. Believe me, I want to quit, but I don't. And just keep moving forward, man.
I fully understand exactly what you mean about having those days that you just want to quit. And, I've had those days. I think we all have those days, but, being, who we are as people and we're not wired that way. So we take our 2 or 3 days and we say, okay, we're done. And then we get right back into that fight. And, it's a tough battle, and you've lived your life, like this for over 20 years. Now, I like to end these podcasts on a very positive note. And I have a final question for you. When you were sitting in your cell block, you had a lot of time to think. Was there ever anything that you thought about, or was there ever any positive thoughts that came to your head, perhaps to say, when I get out, I'm going to live my life a certain way, or perhaps a phrase you came up with to help you get through the days, to help you in your darkest and most vulnerable times in need? What type of advice, what type of knowledge, what type of wisdom can you leave our listeners with today from the experience that you served in federal prison for 2 years and the 20 years of hardship that you've went through?
Tally, all that depends on what day it is in prison. All right. So there were days in prison that I just didn't want to do anything, and I was blank. I had nothing. There were other days, and for a long time, I was like, when I get out of here, I'm gonna hunt everybody down. I'm gonna hunt that dope smuggler down in Mexico. I'm gonna hunt everybody, and I'm gonna kill everybody, because those can't help but being in prison. That's what goes through your mind. Then you start, realizing that when you get out, you're actually gonna have to do something. And then, my son was about 7 or 8 years old when I was in prison. And I had my mom. So I was like, I got to do the right thing. And I got to put all my trust in the hands of God. I had a lot of positive thoughts at the time. I had a fiance at the time who left me 3 months before I got out of the prison. But she kept me focused. Because I planned everything on how I was gonna do good when I got out around her. And then when I got out, she wasn't there, and I was going down this chute again, down into the abyss. And I told a friend of mine what I did. I said, man, I planned everything out around it, and now my whole plan's gone to shit. He goes, well, that's the problem. You plan your whole life around a woman. You need to plan your life around God.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Amazing. Man, all I can say to anybody, and believer or not, when you have hard times and you don't know what to do, put everything in the hands of God. Pray and tell him, I don't know what to do. Guide me. I still do that to this day because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to just live life and live a good, decent life and help others. That's all I want to do. That's why I want to be a cop again, because I want to continue serving. I never finished. Trust God. Trust God. I got a tattoo that says trust no one. God isn't no one. God's everyone. So trust God always. Put everything in his hands. He'll never steer you wrong.
Amen. Amen. Folks, check out Gary Brugman podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, except for YouTube. He is everywhere you get your podcasts online. Gary Brugman podcast. And also, if you like what you heard, you like Gary, he's a great guy. You can follow him on Instagram at gary.brugman. That's at gary.brugman. Gary, look, I want to thank you for joining us today. And I say us, it's me and our listeners out there. I think you've done a remarkable job telling your story. You've opened up in ways that I wouldn't have expected you to, but we certainly do appreciate it. I can only imagine the lives that you are going to touch out here today with our listeners and abroad. You're an honorable man, and I sincerely appreciate everything you have done and continue to do in the military and veteran community.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
And I'll let you know, your service, your sacrifice, and dedication to our great nation is truly admirable, and remember that.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I want to thank you for having me. I know we've been talking about this for a minute. It was good seeing you out at Chad Prather's show. I didn't expect to see you there. I was glad you were there. And man, thank you. Anytime you want to have me back, or you need anything, a filler, I'm here, man.
Good to go, man. It's always great connecting.
Thank you, brother. Love you, bro.
Love you, buddy. Folks, remember to stay inspired, stay encouraged, stay motivated, and always stay in the fight. Until next time, for Today with Tally, this is Brian Tally. Good night, Semper Fi, and God bless.